NBC Chicago reports, as Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot approaches the 2-year anniversary of her inauguration, reaching the halfway point through her first term, she told the city's media outlets that she would grant one-on-one interviews to mark the occasion, but with one condition. She will only speak with journalists of color. Lightfoot tweeted Wednesday morning, I ran to break up the status quo that was failing so many. That isn't just in City Hall. It's a shame that in 2021, the City Hall press corps is overwhelmingly white in a city where more than half of the city identifies as Black, Latino, AAPI, or Native American. What is AAPI? Is that Pacific Islander? Anyway, I'm not going to guess. Diversity and inclusion is imperative across all institutions, including media. In order to progress, we must change. This is exactly why I'm being intentional about prioritizing media requests from POC reporters on the occasion of the 2-year anniversary of my inauguration as mayor of this great city. So, first of all, it's great that this is her priority, as it's just bloodshed in the streets of Chicago. People, kids, women being shot and killed as they walk down the street. So that's happening. Morgues overflowing with bodies, not because of COVID, but because of the violence and the gang culture in the city. She's not worried about that. She's worried about making sure there are more Black people reporters that are at the press conferences. And her response is, and let's be clear also, when she's saying, I only want to have interviews with Black, Latino, AAPI, whatever that is, or Native American. What she's really saying is, I don't want to be interviewed by any white people. So sometimes they get away with this kind of thing because they sort of try to frame it in a positive way. They say, "Oh no, we're just giving opportunities to these groups over here." But what you're really saying is, you don't want white people to interview you. Because you only singled out one, there's only one group you left out. You put every other group in. It's kind of like when you are in 3rd grade and you invite everyone in the class to your birthday party except for one kid. And of course, those of us with good parents, we were raised and told, listen, you can invite the whole class or you can invite 1 or 2 kids. What you can't do is invite most of the kids except one. That you can't do. But Lori Lightfoot, we can assume for many reasons, was not raised well. And so this is flat out bigotry and racism against white people. It is anti-white racism. And that's what we should name it and call it that, because that's what it is. Now, there may have been I'm sure if I checked, there are some Republicans who complained about Lightfoot saying this, maybe tweeted about it. I'm not sure. I'll assume that some Republicans did. And maybe even called it racism. But there was one elected representative on the national stage, only one that I'm aware of, that went so far as to say this. This is Tulsi Gabbard, who I should remind you is not a Republican. She's a Democrat. And this is what she tweeted. Mayor Lightfoot's blatant anti-white racism is abhorrent. I call upon President Biden, Kamala Harris, and other leaders of our country of all races to join me in calling for Mayor Lightfoot's resignation. Our leaders must condemn all racism, including anti-white. Calling it not just racism, anti-white racism, and then saying that Lightfoot should resign. Now, I love this statement from Tulsi Gabbard. She's exactly 100% right. What I don't love is that she's the only one saying that, and she's a Democrat. What a shame. What an absolute shaming, well-deserved shaming of the Republican Party. That this is not coming from any Republican, it's coming from a Democrat. And the thing is, as a Democrat saying this, you know, Tulsi, this takes courage. I actually have respect. She's the one Democrat, one elected Democrat I can think of who I have respect for. Even though I still don't agree with many of her views. But this actually takes courage. Because all of your colleagues in the Democrat Party, your base, everyone that you need to support you and everything, they're all going to be against you for this. Because that's taboo. You don't talk about anti-white racism. In fact, anti-white racism, according to them, doesn't exist. But Republicans, they would risk nothing by calling it out. Yeah, the left's going to be mad at you. The Democrats are going to be mad at you, but they'll be mad no matter what. And most conservatives, no matter their race, black, white, doesn't matter, would be perfectly happy for you to call out anti-white racism because that's what it is. And it doesn't matter. If you're a Republican, who cares what the Democrats say? Doesn't make a difference. They're going to hate you no matter what. You don't need them to like you, and they won't no matter what you say. So you have literally nothing to lose. You might as well speak up. But these cowards, they can't even endure. They're going to get some frowny faces in the halls of Congress when they're walking by the Democrats. And they can't even that they can't endure. Tulsi Gabbard put a lot more than that on the line. But we need to be very clear about this. As conservatives, if that is how you identify, I think we need to be very clear. It's not enough to just blanket statement, condemn racism in response to something like this. We need to call it what it is. It is anti-white racism. Anti-white racism exists. There's a whole lot of it. In fact, it's the only form of racism in America that's socially acceptable. And it's one of the only forms of racism that's also institutional and systemic. Arguably, another form would be anti-Asian bigotry, which through affirmative action, that is very real as well and systemic. And yeah, calling for her to resign the same way. I don't need to point this out, but I will. Just if you can imagine a white mayor saying that he only wants to be interviewed by his fellow white people, I think he'd be arrested. I think they would send I think the FBI would be knocking on his door and they'd arrest him they'd find something. They would arrest him for felony rudeness. I guarantee it. Hate crime charges. I'm right. This is not, I wish it was like a joke or an exaggeration, but a hyperbole. It's not. They would call that a hate crime. But Lightfoot can say it and, no problem. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.